Mr. Chair, we're on the air whenever you're ready to begin.
Okay. I will now call to order the meeting of the Santa Barbara County Planning Commission of July 7th, 2021, and ask everyone online to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Mr. Villalobos, will you please do the TV coverage and roll call?
Yes, thank you. Planning Commission hearings are televised live on County of Santa Barbara Television, CSB TV, Channel 20 at 9 a.m. in the South Coast, Lompoc, San Ynez Valley, Semri, and Orca areas. Rebroadcasts of Planning Commission hearings are on Fridays after 5 p.m. on CSB TV, Channel 20. Today's hearing will also be streamed live on the county's website and available for download in a day or two. Moving on to the roll call. Commissioner Bradley.
Here.
Commissioner Park.
Here.
Commissioner Blau.
Here.
Chair Cooney.
Here.
And for the record, our Chair Farini is absent today.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Wilson, how are you today?
Good morning, Chair and members of the Commission. Thanks. I'm doing fine. In regards to the agenda status report, we have one item on consent, and then we had one item listed on the standard agenda, and there was a memo filed yesterday. I'm indicating that the appellants have withdrawn that appeal, and we can address that when we move to the standard agenda. Chair, I can move on to the projection report if you would like.
I would like. Thank you very much.
Our next scheduled hearing was for July 14th. There are no items listed on that, which is next week. My recommendation is we move ahead to cancel that hearing after the projection report. And then after that, our next hearing is July 28th. And there are a number of items listed on that. A battery storage project. We did have the CEO's office scheduled to provide a briefing on that day on business licenses for cannabis operations. And then we have the appeal of the Orca gas station, and then the appeal of the Creek property listed on the July 28th as well. One item that we wanted to go over with the commission today is on August 4th, we're trying to do a split hearing with the Montecito Planning Commission in the morning, and then starting the County Planning Commission afterwards, maybe in the afternoon. And the reason for that is we are looking at revising the temporary development standards suspension for the COVID ordinance amendments that we did last year, to make some extensions to that, probably maybe push it out 6 months to maybe a year, to allow for some economic recovery activities to occur for those businesses that are actually taking advantage of those ordinance or those provisions that we adopted last year. So we're trying to get to the Board of Supervisors by September. And so to do that, we have kind of an expedited process. So we're trying to have the Montecito Planning Commission in the morning on August 4th, and then the County Planning Commission in the afternoon. And there would be two items on that date, which would be the ordinance amendment. And then we had continued the New Era cannabis project to that date. So hopefully that works with the both of the commissions so that we can meet our timelines to get to the board for that ordinance amendment package. And then August 11th, we have the continuation of the Key Site 21 neighborhoods of Willow Creek and Hidden Canyon, as well as we have a project for SoCal Gas Line 1004. And then there's no items projected until we get to September 29th and October 1st, which we had set the hearings for ExxonMobil. for their trucking. And then after that, we don't have anything projected until October 27th, where we have a housing bill implementation, ordinance amendments scheduled. So that wraps up the projection report. Any questions? And if we want to take up that cancellation on July 14th, that'd be great too.
I'll move for the cancellation for July 14th.
July 14th, the motion is to cancel that meeting. Is there a second? Commissioner Park?
Yes, I'll second the motion.
Very good. Is there further discussion on that motion from the commission? All right, Mr. Villalobos?
Commissioner Briley,
Aye.
Commissioner Park,
Aye.
Commissioner Blau,
Aye.
and Chair Cooney.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
And
Thank you.
in respect with Secretary Wilson's discussion of joint meeting with Montecito, is there some reason we don't have the meeting together with them? I mean, why would we want to do the meeting twice? It seems like it's, let the staff make one presentation to all 10 of us at one time, and we can move it forward. Is that more efficient? I mean, I have no problem meeting at 11 o'clock, or, you pick a time certain to where we can make it more efficient.
Other questions, comments for Mr. Wilson's consideration
I have
on the
one.
joint meeting? Commissioner Park?
Oh, on the joint meeting, that's fine with me. Either way you do it, whether we do it together like Commissioner Blau suggested or split it, it's fine with me. I had a question about how solid are the dates for the Exxon hearing?
Chair Cooney, and to respond to Commissioner Blau and Commissioner Park's questions first, we can look into having a joint hearing with the planning commissions. One reason for keeping it separate, though, is that the Montecito Planning Commission is going to be providing a recommendation to the County Planning Commission in regards to Article 2, and they would be taking a separate action on the Montecito Land Use and Development Code. So one of the reasons to keep it separate is just to keep those actions separate and sequential. But we can look into a joint hearing. At this moment, my recommendation is probably not to do that. But that would be the only thing they would hear. And so we could, if they get it done in an hour or 2 hours, we could move the County Planning Commission earlier. So I'll keep everybody posted on that. Actually, and on July 28th, or an email and just outline kind of the format on that. And then as far as ExxonMobil, thank you, Commissioner Park. There has been some discussions and inquiries to our office about moving that date to accommodate some other parties that are interested in that. As of today, I don't have any updates on that. At our next meeting, it may be some possibility that it could be moved either a week later or earlier, depending on the coordinations with the interested parties on that.
And I'll just comment further that I don't care whether you do it jointly or separately. I'm just trying to provide the staff the opportunity to make it easier on them. Whatever's easier for the staff is okay by me. So I'm happy to let them make the decision. Let us know how you want to proceed.
Commissioner Blau, the chair, I appreciate that comment. We might take full advantage of whatever's easiest.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Wilson, if you listen to Commissioner Blau, that staff's preference always prevails, you might be led astray. So let's go one item at a time. Commissioner Bridley.
Just on the concept of the joint meeting, I think that the kinds of discussions with the different code and the very, very focused energy that MPC has, it would almost be more efficient to have them be separate. But with a tight time frame, right? If you do the presentation to them and then we're an hour and a half later, that seems like that would be very efficient. You're not actually having staff hang around too many hours. So again, whatever staff wants to do. The other thing I just wanted to touch on is the material for the CEO business license briefing. When I brought this up or when we talked about it, the hope was about where are the business licenses going and just the whole system, the whole system, including enforcement, because that comes up for a lot of our cannabis cases. So I am assuming there's an enforcement function with the CEO's office, just like there's a permit compliance function with P&D. So I'm hoping that that session on July 28th can cover both the business licenses as well as current state of conduct with enforcement requests, if that makes sense.
Commissioner Bradley, through chair, I'll pass that information on and coordinate with the CEO's office on the presentation information that they have available to share with you. And then in regards to the hearing on August 4th, we'll keep those separate at the moment, with Montecito Planning Commission in the morning and then County Planning Commission following.
That is, the morning meeting would be a joint meeting at present, no?
No. So the way we have it set up, I'm sorry, Chair Cooney and commissioners, the way we have it set it up now, it'll be two separate hearings. In the morning, the Montecito Planning Commission will meet at 9 a.m. and they will only hear the ordinance amendments package. And then they will provide recommendations to the County Planning Commission on regards to Article 2. And then they will make recommendations to the board on the MLUDC. And then following that hearing, we will start the County Planning Commission. And the County Planning Commission will then take up the item and the recommendations from the MPC in regards to Article 2. So it'll be two separate hearings on that date.
Okay, and so as time goes along, we'll be setting the time of the County Planning Commission. It could be later in the morning or separate in the afternoon.
Yeah, Chair Cooney, the way we have it set up right now is that we'd start the County Planning Commission at 1. However, and I'm looking at Mr. Villalobos, we could tentatively set it to start at 11 a.m. And that would only be contingent on the Montecito Planning Commission completing their business by 11 o'clock. But it being as it's a special hearing, they wouldn't have an admin agenda and it would just go straight into hearing the item. So we'd anticipate that they'd be able to complete it in 2 hours. So as of right now, we have it set at 9 a.m. for Montecito Planning Commission and 1 p.m. for the County Planning Commission. But I'll work with Mr. Villalobos if we could move up the county to 11.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on the projection report? Seeing none, we can move to Mr. Villalobos and public comment. This is the opportunity for members of the public to comment on items not on today's agenda. And we encourage and welcome any public comments. Are there any proposed public comments today, Mr. Villalobos?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do not have any public speakers at this time.
Okay. So we'll go to the Planning Commissioner informational reports. Seeing none, we can move to the Director's report. And who's giving that today, Mr. Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Plowman is out of the office today, and so I'll provide a brief update. I don't have anything new to inform the commission. There was no Board of Supervisor hearing this week. Looking at the long-range calendar, on next Tuesday, on July 13th, there are 2 items of interest from our department at the board. One of them has to do with seeking direction from the Board of Supervisors in regards to utility-grade solar zoning amendments, and get direction from the board on developing those ordinance amendments, and which will ultimately go back. We'll be going through the Planning Commission back to the board with the recommendation from the Planning Commission. And then we also have a appeal of the Suarez appeal of the cannabis project that was out in Cuyama. And then it's the Suarez cannabis cultivation project. That was heard by the Planning Commission. That's going to be heard next Tuesday at the board. And then other upcoming appeals that are going to the board is the appeal of the Autumn Brands in Ocean Hills, and that's set to go August 24th. And then the appeal of the Canarios is set to go on August 31st. And then we're projecting later on throughout the year, bringing an item to the Board of Supervisors on a zoning ordinance amendment package that I think I talked about last week, as well as getting board direction on any future cannabis ordinance amendments. There's also looking down throughout the rest of the year, scheduling Board of Supervisor hearing in regards to Oasis. We're still coordinating with their applicant team. And then Keysite 3, we're still, being that both of those projects require a general plan amendment. We do have to be aware of our general plan cycle and schedule those appropriately. So that's what we have projected out to the Board of Supervisors. In regards to in-person hearings, I think we'll be briefing or updating the Planning Commission. We anticipate maybe looking at our projection report. Potentially, we may be in person when we return, maybe mid or end of August. So I'll let you know if August 11th will be in person or not. Otherwise, it could be if there's any items projected end of August or early September for in-person hearings. So that's what I have for the director's report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Any comments or questions from commissioners on the report of the director or our secretary, as you prefer? Yes, Commissioner Briley.
I didn't write down quickly enough. On August 31st, Mr. Wilson, is that Canarios, and what was the other? Did you mention another appeal there? Or maybe it was on August 24th.
Commissioner Bradley through the chair. Yeah, just a quick recap. Items that are scheduled out is on August 31st, we have the appeal of the Canarios project. And then on August 24th is the appeal of the Otter Brands LLC and Ocean Hills Cannabis Project.
Okay. And a second question, you mentioned, and it's been a long time since I had a case myself that involved a general plan amendment, but you're talking about actually having to calendar things according to your cycle. Could you just remind me about that in any case that we're looking at that has a GPA? As much as we take an action on it and recommend that the board do the GPA, they are the legislative body that does it. But you can only get to them, twice a year? And is it within a certain number of months, or how does that work exactly? Sorry for the newbie question.
No, thank you, Commissioner Bradley, the chair. We're allowed to amend our general plan 4 times a year. And so when I talk about cycles, so we've had one general plan amendment go to the board early this year. I think it might have been a Montecito project. So we're looking at potentially if we have multiple general plan amendments, either through long range planning or development review division, we just need to make sure that when we go to the legislative body or the board of supervisors that we bundle those so that we're only amending the general plan the 4 times a year. So that's what we're coordinating just to make sure that we're meeting those requirements.
Okay, and so you're bundling Oasis and the Keysite 3 because they both involve GPAs. They're about the same timing.
Yeah, we're looking at we have 6 months left in the year approximately. So we're looking at all the projects that have a general plan requirement and deciding on when they could go to the board. At this point, we're not committed to bundling Oasis and Keysite 3, but we do need to be cognizant that in order to meet our timelines to go to hearing, we need to make sure that we have sufficient timing to, if we want to do 2 in the remaining year, we'd have to schedule them appropriately and bundle whatever remaining general plan amendments in those board hearings twice.
Okay, thank you.
So I believe there's, Commissioner Bradley through the chair, I believe there may be 2 more other projects out there that potentially could also be scheduled. I think they're through Montecito potentially.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Briley and Mr. Wilson. That brings us to the consent item. We do have a consent item. Are we ready to proceed with that? Okay. So, Mr. Villalobos, if you'll read item C1 into the record, please.
Yes, thank you. The following is a hearing on the request of the Santa Barbara County Public Works Department to consider case number 21GOV7, an application for a determination the acquisition of certain real property conforms with the comprehensive plan of the County of Santa Barbara pursuant to California Government Code 65402A.
Commissioners, are there any ex parte declarations from anyone? Okay. So this is a consent item. In order to discuss it further, we really need to have a commissioner suggest they would like to remove it from the consent agenda to the regular agenda. Do I see anyone interested in that? Commissioner Park?
I want to say it's in my district. I studied it carefully. I think staff did a very good job of working this up. All the materials were there for us to read. I think it's very clear, and I see no need to take it off the consent agenda, so I don't want to take it off the consent agenda. And at the right time, I will move to adopt the recommendations in the consent agenda.
I'll second that right now.
Well, we don't have a motion yet, Commissioner Blau. I just wanted to ask to make sure that no other commissioner wanted to remove it from the consent agenda, and I'm not seeing any indication of that. So, Commissioner Park, go ahead with your motion.
Yes, I do move to adopt all the recommendations made in the consent agenda.
I'll second it again.
Thank you, Commissioner Blau. Further discussion? And we'll have the roll call.
Commissioner Bradley,
Aye.
Commissioner Park,
Aye.
Commissioner Blau,
Aye.
Chair Cooney.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Very good. So we have one regular agenda item. Would you read that into the record, Mr. Villalobos?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The following is a hearing on the request of Drum Canyon neighbors, William Hines, Michael and Ellen Deerberg, and Brian and Chumra Strange to consider case number 21 APL 13, an appeal of the planning director's approval of case number 18 LUP 275.
Are there any ex parte direct declarations by any of our commissioners on this item, Drum Canyon? Commissioner Blau.
It's, excuse me, hang on 1 minute here.
Call from 18053.
I don't have a ex parte. What I have is actually a discussion with staff about this item and about the issue of withdrawals or cancellations of items on the agenda. So I'm not sure if that's ready to be discussed now or not, but I've had a lot of discussion with Secretary Wilson and Ms. Richardson, and I want to discuss that with the rest of the commission when it's appropriate.
Very good. Let's finish ex parte. Commissioner Park.
Yes, I spoke yesterday with Gilleray Macon, who was planner working with the appellants this time. And I look forward to hearing from Commissioner Blau. I'd like to report that although I was not directly involved in the settlement negotiations, I kind of observed them. And I want to reiterate my comments that I made last week, that when the Planning Commission holds people's feet to the fire and tries to encourage settlement, then it will motivate that. It's the only thing that will motivate it. And us doing that means that we're not undermining those settlement negotiations that occur. A curious feature of this settlement negotiation was that it involved people from the cannabis industry actually on both sides, and that there were other people in the cannabis industry who were acting as intermediaries, and they all came up together with something that appears to be satisfactory to everyone. Commissioner Cooney, of course, is familiar with a saying we have in litigation about settlement, that a good settlement is one that doesn't make anybody happy. And that's probably something here where not everybody's totally happy with what they got, but they got it done, and it's a good thing. So that's my ex parte declaration.
Okay, we have Commissioner Bridley has disclosure.
Yes, I just had a conversation with Ms. Macon as well yesterday about the appeal and was unable to reach, or I didn't even, forgot to try Ms. Steinfeld, but I would have had a similar conversation with her. So just Ms. Macon yesterday about the appeal terms of withdrawal. Thank you.
Okay, so let's have a staff presentation and then we can have our discussion on issues related to withdrawal of appeals.
Chair Cooney and Commissioners, being that the item was withdrawn, there isn't a staff presentation other than the items regarding the appeal. So staff can present any information regarding the withdrawal of the appeals, but the project isn't before the commission, as the commission is aware, because they withdrew the appeals. So we have Ms. Lear and Ms. Elkurdy available for any questions regarding the withdrawal of the appeals. And they provide some recommended motions as well. Ms. Lear, Ms. Elkurdy, if you would like to go over that.
Sure. Good morning, Commissioners. As of last week, the appellants have withdrawn their appeal of the Sun Valley Ranch Cannabis Cultivation Project. Today, we are recommending that the Commission acknowledge the withdrawal, drop the item from the agenda, and as a result, the original approval of 18 LUP 275 from January 19th, 2021 will be final.
Thank you. Anything to add, Ms. Lair?
Nothing to add.
Okay. Well, I think Commissioner Blau, you can lay the groundwork for a question we all may have about all the work that's done and how we basically are left without any influence on the project, even though we've all studied it in great detail. So, Commissioner Blau.
Well, and that's part of my concern. My first question is, I did notice that there were 3 appellants in this particular appeal. And so my first question is, did each of the appellants pay a fee to do the appeal, or was it one fee paid for all 3 appellants? I asked that question because it would concern me going forward that what if we'd have had 2 appellants that wanted to drop the appeal, but one did not? Who paid the appeal fee? Who has the right to continue the appeal? The other problem I have is that it's nice to have 2 lawyers on the commission, but I know in my experience in the past, when I have settled an issue in court, it's rare that we just simply don't have the hearing. At a minimum, we tell the judge how we came to a resolution, and the resolution becomes part of the court order so that it becomes somewhat permanent. And I have that same concern here. I also have some concern that we do have at least one letter from Renee O'Neill commenting on this particular project, and as a result of not having a hearing and not having the commission weigh in on the issues that are presented before us, that they're not considered. I mean, the fact that someone made an appeal and you've got the public that's out there weighing in and providing testimony and making recommendations for, de novo conditions of approval, and then we don't hear it. So did we prevent the public from being able to properly participate in the decision we make? So I have some concern. I'm also concerned, to tell you the truth, that the county paid us today $1,400. Thank God Commissioner Farini didn't show up. the county saved $350. But the point is that how do we have a hearing for which we did a consent item that probably could have waited till next week or next month, and the county expended $1,400 for the four of us to come to this meeting? Seems somewhat crazy. I'm wondering if there is in some way we can change the way we do our procedures, such that, like last week, for example, I think Mr. Wilson started the meeting saying that we had 3 items in the hearing. All 3 are on continuance. Why do we have the meeting? It seems to me we could have, saved the county a lot of money and saved us a lot of time by having some procedure to where we could electronically agree to the continuances and not go forward. Now, I will say I did talk to Ms. Richardson about this a little bit, and I would not be in favor of doing some kind of electronic vote that would take 3 of us to, have a continuance and 2. I would be happy with the fact that Mr. Villalobos could email us and say, look, I've got 4 items that want a continuance. Does anybody object to the continuance? If any commissioner objects to the continuance, I would say have the hearing. It doesn't take a vote. It just takes one of us, just like it does if we have a consent item. It only takes one commissioner to pull it off the consent calendar and put it as a regular hearing item. It just seems to me, I'm sorry to be so conscious about the money, but there was almost no reason for today's hearing. I mean, for my hearing from Mr. Wilson and from Ms. Richardson, that there's nothing to hear here. The fact that the appellants withdrew their appeal, there's no hearing. There's nothing for us to vote on. Why are we here today? I get it on the one consent item, but it seems to me that was a expensive consent item to have considered today. Those are my comments.
Who else would like to comment? Commissioner Bradley.
I do agree with Commissioner Blau on a couple of those points. However, in my view, and again, I'm the newest member of your commission, but I have been around planning departments for a long time. This is a very unusual industry. It's a very unusual process. The ordinance landed in our laps after I know you guys did a lot of work on it, and it's been a challenge on all regards for all sides. So I think that, I kind of hearken back to something that Commissioner Park said months ago, which is these settlement agreements are the newest trend in the cannabis industry. And I'm personally happy about that. Everybody on this commission knows that by the time an applicant or an appellant is in front of this commission, they have probably expended at least 10 times the amount of time with their team, with their own people, and with people that might testify on either side of it. So to actually have an hour or 2 to take a continuance is minuscule in the big picture of it. The fact that we have to spend money on holding a hearing, that's unfortunate. I don't think actually we are sloppy about how to do that time management. There are plenty of agendas where we're going 8 or 9 hours and trying to shove as much of it on the agenda as possible. So I don't feel that badly about it. And Commissioner Blau's suggestion about having some sort of way to do an electronic agreement to continue, maybe there's some value in that. I'd be very interested in hearing from staff and county council on that. But I think we have to give ourselves a little bit of a pass on this. Again, I will say, in 35 years of land use planning, I have never seen anything quite as unusual as the cannabis process industry and the kinds of hearings. And frankly, the industry has evolved, the appellant positions have evolved, the addition of the privately created agreements have evolved, the ordinance has evolved, the science has evolved. I mean, I probably have another couple points to make. So in the 2 years that we have been dealing with implementation of this ordinance through cases, I don't think we've done a bad job at all. And I don't think that, it's unfortunate that we have a meeting where, we might be done in an hour and a half, but sometimes that happens. I mean, really, if statistically you look back in the 5 years and you wonder how many times you had a meeting that seemed to be of no or less value, I doubt if it happens very often. I mean, maybe 5% of the time. So I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. I am appreciative when applicants and appellants do the hard work that I know Ms. Steinfeld and Ms. Macon and the appellants and the applicant have done, and come to us with a resolution of private parties, because frankly, they're the ones that are going to live with it long after we're done with the commission. So that's my view of it. There you go.
Those are great comments, Commissioner Bradley, and Commissioner Blau, on a different level, also very insightful. But we owe our duty to the public, I think, to explain why a case disappears off the radar screen. And we have no input, the public has no input with respect to that decision. The only route available to us and to any member of the public dissatisfied with a decision of staff to issue a permit is to appeal it. And what we do by vesting in the appellants, the process, is we give them the right to pull the process before we have any binding changes to the permit itself. So we go all the way back to when this permit was issued, and we look at that and see what, if any, restrictions there were on the applicant. And it's not like in court where a settlement is proposed to a judge, and the judge can modify it, reject it, accept it with changes. There are lots of choices in court. We don't have those choices. We have no jurisdiction at this point, except to talk among ourselves and the public about our frustration that maybe just a couple of tweaks to the project that we would insert would make it a different and better outcome. But nonetheless, I'm glad to have Ms. Richardson add her comments before we terminate, but I don't see that we have any choice. This is the process, and we're following it. And we, along with members of the public, such as Ms. O'Neill, are left to wonder exactly what is going to be the setback, if any, and what is the road issue going to be now that we have only the original permit. It's a bit frustrating, to be sure, but it is the process. It's part of the ordinance, and we only have land use permits for many of these projects, so it could recur. And we don't want to discourage settlement, but it really, what it means in the end is the Planning Commission's recommendations, if the parties don't make them themselves, are irrelevant. So Commissioner Park has the last word from the commission. Would you like to hear from County Council first?
I'm happy to say what I have to say. I've kind of lost track of what I'm asking, or what we're asking from County Council. But,
yeah, I think the only thing that you and I may be comfortable with is how different this is from court. And Ms. Richardson, do you have any other comments with respect to the matter before us today, which is simply to acknowledge the existence of a settlement, the terms of which we don't know?
Or Commissioner Cooney and members of the commission. So you're correct that this is different than the process in court. There's a couple different ways we've seen appeals work out. In this circumstance, the appeal was withdrawn and the parties must be okay with the original permit approval. Sometimes when settlement takes the path of changes to the project, that's when your commission hears it and sees sort of a revised project. And in that case, you do have a role in determining if that's appropriate or if you have other concerns. But in this circumstance, the commission doesn't have a role in the details. And then in terms of a member of the public being involved that didn't appeal the project, just the way our code is written, if a member of the public does not file an appeal, they're essentially at the mercy of the appellant. So they have no control of the project on their own. And then more broadly, just speaking to continuances, I'd recommend against any sort of email process to vote on continuances because it would need to be a public vote since it's a Brown Act item. One option, if we do have the circumstance from last week where all of the items are requesting continuances, the chair or the recording secretary could potentially cancel the meeting, and then we would need to just renotice all those items for the new day. So there's some options should we have all of the items sort of go off calendar, but often we have just some of the items and it's easier to just vote on a continuance since we're there anyway, but we've had some unique hearings lately.
Oh, thank you very much, Ms. Richardson. You're always very concise and your advice is appreciated. Okay, any other Commissioner Park?
Yeah, I still want to make my comments. This is actually a pretty complex subject. First, I want to suggest that litigation in the courts is not as simple as it sounds here. Many cases, contract cases, personal injury, things like that, when we have settlements, they involve the payment of money and the dismissal of the case, and the court's not involved at all. Other cases, probate litigation, where you're representing a fiduciary and the court's looking out for the interests of a beneficiary, a conservatee, things like that, and the court does get involved. Injunctive relief cases, the court gets involved, but probably most settlements, really, the court is not so much involved. Different in federal court. Okay, enough lesson on the law. Getting to the issue at hand, I've discussed this at great length with a lot of people in the cannabis industry. And the reason I'm so interested in it is that I do believe, and I say this in public, I say at these hearings, and I say it privately to people in the cannabis industry and the wine industry, that the constant attention of planners, attorneys, people in industry on how to make these things work better is making a difference. The constant attention of our planning commission is making a difference. I'm probably the most vocal or most harsh on the cannabis industry of the planning commissioners, but I give them credit. That is the cannabis industry for making this more workable in a practical sense. So I think we are making progress. That being said, I want to spread the word and encourage these settlements. And when we have hearings, I want to be able to use the features of some of those settlements as examples to show how we can improve things and make them better. The problem is we usually can't share them if we have these private settlements. We either don't know them or I'm not at liberty to speak about them. That's a little bit of a tension. And, you'll get people in the cannabis industry who will say they agree with me as a general trend and they appreciate the compliment. On the other hand, in their own particular cases, they run some risks with these settlements. That is, if a settlement is one where they change some important features of the project description and conditions of approval, then it comes to us, or sometimes it even doesn't come to us, just comes to the director. But there's another appeal period for other people to appeal those changes. And they want to avoid that. When they reach a settlement, they want it over and done with. They certainly don't want a new cast of characters appealing it again. So that's one reason that what they try to do is just to have the appeals dismissed, and then the process is completely over with. I kind of get that from their point of view. It really isn't consistent with what I'm trying to do and improve the process. Now, there's always the law of unintended consequences. And the longer you practice law, the more you see unintended consequences. One thing I see here, I kind of suspect that there are going to be some folks that are looking in on these cases and saying, you know, we're also disappointed we're not hearing about the content of these settlements. There's the public interest maybe isn't being put first and foremost. And we're going to appeal some of these things so that we have a vote on whether the case goes away or not. So you may see people who are out there in the county, whether they're in organizations or just private citizens who are, not entirely trusting the process, and they may decide to start appealing these cases and joining these appeals just so that there's a more open process. And, is that a good or bad thing? I don't know. So there you go. I made something simple complex, but I'm glad this case was settled. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Commissioner Park. Commissioner Blau, your hand is up.
Yeah, I'm still up. And Commissioner Park raises my biggest issue. I mean, what's to prevent me from filing an appeal on a project, and then 10 days later, when the appeal period for anybody else is over with, I drop the appeal. Now it can't be before the commission again from anybody else. It can't go before the board. We're done. And how do I know if I don't know what the settlement agreement was and what any conditions of approval were modified with the director or however, that someone from the public doesn't have the opportunity to object to it. So I have a problem with the appellant being able to simply drop the case and we no longer hear it, and they tell me there's been a settlement that's occurred. What's the settlement? Did I agree with it? Did the public agree with it? Did they change the project description in a way that I don't know about? I can't tell you. So I have a problem with it. And I'm not sure what the process needs to be. But I can see a situation where, I'm going to tell applicants, hey, you know what? Go out and get some straw guy to file the appeal within the 10-day appeal period, whatever the time frame is, and then 2 weeks later, drop it. Now everybody else thinks that, it's being appealed. I can put in my slip. I could give testimony to the commission to modify the project. Oops, guess what? Now I can't do it. I'm barred from doing it. I can't take it to the board because the appeal period has been expired. That's what you said. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Commissioner, I saw Mr. Wilson's hand there, but let me respond to part of what you're saying, Commissioner Blau, and that is, we have advocated as a commission openly and publicly numerous times our view that these cannabis projects, which have impacts on our communities, should be subject to a conditional use permit, in which case we guarantee that the public will have input, as will the current members of whatever commission is asked to issue the permit. When it's a mere land use permit, the staff can issue and does issue that permit subject to conditions consistent with the ordinance. I don't want to suggest that the staff isn't careful. The staff, I'm sure, is working very hard to get these land use permits conditioned in a way that will protect the public. But to be absolutely clear, the commission has no role in the land use permit issuance or coastal development permit. The commissioners can be on the moon and it doesn't matter what they think or what they would change. So that's our ordinance. And this is a negative aspect of it. It limits public involvement. It depends on neighbors, others that are concerned to file a formal appeal. And be aware that if you leave it to someone else to file the appeal and they make a deal, you don't find out about it. And it's gone. The case is gone. So we're just seeing the first of what could be more of these. I don't want to disagree that settlement is the way to resolve difficult cases, but it places a spotlight on the permit issuance when it is merely a land use permit issued by staff. And that is the case in most of the North County cannabis projects and many as well in the Carpinteria area. So be aware, this is something that is a relief in a way. The commission doesn't have the difficult decisions of what this project should look like, but on the other hand, neither does the public. So I think, we have no formal action today, but I see a couple of others that wish to comment. Commissioner Park.
This is going off on a tangent a little bit, and I'm not trying to undercut your comments. I just point out that, in fact, I was asked to write a memorandum on this by a member of the Board of Supervisors just last week on conditions of approval for LUPs. Then if we look at the LUP ordinance section of the LUDC, I think it's section 35.82.110. It 5 different places it mentions conditions of approval, and one of the required findings we have to make on those appeals is that the project is consistent with the general plan, and of course all of its different elements. And if it's not, then we're not supposed to approve it. So I absolutely agree that we have a great deal more discretion and latitude in conditional use permit cases. But I just always want to be that voice to point out that we do have some latitude in land use permit cases. And in fact, we have a duty to enforce the comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
Chair Cooney and members of the commission, I just want to provide a brief response in regards to Commissioner Blau's comments on process. In regards to settlements, we understand the frustration the commission is feeling today. In regards to settlements, once it's on appeal, as you all are aware, it is a de novo item before you. And if a settlement occurs that would trigger any changes to a condition of approval or project description, then that would continue to go before the commission to cement those changes on a de novo hearing. What we're starting to see is settlements that are not changing the original approval, project description or conditions of approval. So those things are happening outside of the permit parameters that the director approved. And so in those circumstances, then the appeal can be withdrawn and there are no changes then. And so the original permit, as I think Chair Cooney indicated, becomes the enforced permit at that time. So what we've also been indicating to appellants and applicants is if they do withdraw and there's no change to the project description at that time and they come back with changes later, there is a provision in the code about minor changes, but there is a clause in there that says that if the project hasn't been subject to controversy or significant public interest, we can't make those findings for minor change, and that triggers a new permit, which is a new appeal period. And that new appeal period would trigger another de novo hearing at the PC if that action was appealed. So I just want to provide a little bit of context and frame what's happening that we're seeing happening in the industry and these permits.
I'm glad you did, Mr. Wilson. Thank you. We still have more. Commissioner Blau.
Not going to say much more other than the fact that at the very beginning, I think you will remember that I was not in favor of allowing any of these to be a land use permit, that they should have all been a conditional use permit, at least for the first year or 2 years, so that the commission had the ability to sort of set the standards. I think there's been damn few land use permits that have not been appealed to the Planning Commission. And I think it's been a complete waste of time and money to do that. If it had come to us first on a conditional use permit, we would have set the standards, and a year from now or 2 years from now, the staff would have known what kind of conditions to set forth in the different projects, and it wouldn't have been the problem it is today. That being said, I still have grave concerns over the appeal process. I don't think it serves the public or the county as much as it could going forward. And I would look forward to the opportunity to modify that process so that we don't have, in my opinion, the deficiencies that are currently occur. I mean, I'm sorry, I can see smart cannabis growers, if they got any brains at all, have someone file the appeal the day they get their approval on an LUP, just so that the time frame starts and they can say, oh, I withdraw my appeal for whatever reason. And they fool the rest of the public in thinking that they're going to have an opportunity to come in and make comment on the project and the project conditions. I can see that happening. If I'm a land use planner, I'm going to counsel my clients as to how to deal with this. I'm going to get someone to make the appeal for them automatically every time they do an LUP. That's why I asked the question. I did get an answer, by the way, today on our the issue that almost came before us. There's 3 appellants. Did they pay 3 different fees to do the appeal, or did they pay one appeal fee and the other 2 joined in? That being the case, who has the right to withdraw the appeal? I'd like to know that question. But I think it makes a difference going forward.
Okay, we have a question about who pays the appeal fee. Let me call on Ms. Richardson. Her hand is up in general.
Or Chair Cooney and Commissioners, I'll leave it to Mr. Wilson to answer the appeal fee, but I just wanted to clarify that one party filing an appeal does not stop other parties from being able to file an appeal. So even if in Commissioner Blau's hypothetical, if an applicant or someone had filed an appeal, others could still file an appeal, and occasionally we see multiple.
Do each of them have to pay the fee in order to file the appeal? That's my question here. I mean, if there were 3 appeals filed, I ain't got a problem. Was there 1 appeal filed and 2 others joined in?
Okay, Commissioners, I'll leave that to Mr. Wilson. I'm not sure what the standard procedure is.
Sure. Thank you for your comment. Mr. Wilson, on the fees.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Blau, and also Ms. Lair can clean up after me. My understanding is that there was 1 appeal filed. It was filed by the neighbors of Drum Canyon, and 1 appeal fee was filed. So there was actually 1 appeal with all the neighbors joining in on that appeal. So 1 fee was paid. Ms. Lair, do you have anything to add to that?
So we had 1 appellate, not 3. Am I correct?
Secretary Wilson and Commissioner Blau, through the chair, if I may just add to that. So this was a joint appeal filed by 3 parties. So they had an agreement. 1 appeal fee was paid. In the past, if one of those appellants withdraws, the appeal would still go forward because it is still filed. In this case, all 3 appellants have withdrawn. Therefore, we feel comfortable withdrawing this one appeal, even though it was representing 3 separate parties.
So my question is, what would you have done if there are 2 of them filed withdrawal and 1 did not?
Commissioner Blau, through the chair, we would have proceeded with the appeal.
Commissioner Blau, anything further?
No, I mean, this is not that important to me. I think it could be a real problem in the future. I just want to point it out to staff and to my fellow commissioners. Something I think we need to think about. And I think we actually need to modify the appeal process because I can see where it would not render the solutions that we might want to see going forward.
Okay, Commissioner Briley.
I was really ready to let this go, but the other factor, if we ever do come back to an appeal discussion or a request to refine that in the code somehow, remember that we also have the sequential appeal situation where you can actually get the land use permit appealed, and then the applicant goes and pulls a grading permit in that, or it gets a final BAR action, and that is appealable. We saw that with Mr. Shatillo, I think, on a CCA case where he came back for the grading permit appeal. So as much as the LUP appeals may have been withdrawn, I appreciate staff and county council's clarification that if there's 3 different appellants, they all have to agree to withdraw it. And if you have a concern that you're not going to have your day in the commission, then you just don't withdraw it, right? So I guess I'm not so worried that this is totally broken. I think we're just seeing a lot of them with this particular industry. And I still support the concept of the private agreements because that's really, it's a neighborhood and it's the owner of the cannabis farm that's going to actually have to live with it in the end, not the staff. So at any rate, that's it. Sorry, moving on. Just had to bring up the thing about sequentials.
Okay, well, thank you all for input into what is something that happens every day. Lots and lots of land use permits are issued by our county staff, and we never hear about them. They're never appealed. Maybe the neighbor knows. Maybe the neighbor goes next door and says, gee, your proposed house looks awfully big to me. I think it's going to block my view. And the owner, the property applicant says, no, what I'm going to do is delete that tower and make sure it doesn't block your view. We never hear about that settlement. As long as it complies with all of the county regulations to issue the permit in the first place, the public is deemed protected. But I think the public needs to be aware, particularly in the cannabis cases, which are much of our business at the Planning Commission. They can whisk away in thin air, and the Planning Commission itself, as well as staff, don't have any more enforcement provisions than apply to the original permit that was issued. So we'll see how it goes. It's been a good discussion and worth our time. So anything else? Are there any public comments on this item, Mr. Villalobos?
No public comment.
You have no hearing.
No, I know, but I think we have press the line of our discussion on matters of interest to the public. So I wanted to be sure no one was waiting to add their comment. And the record says there are no public comments. So I don't think we have any other business today. Mr. Wilson, anything else for us to consider?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, there's no other business. We do have recommended motions that staff has provided in regards to acknowledging the withdrawal of the appeal in the memo that was submitted, I believe, yesterday. And if the chair wanted to, I think the appellants and maybe applicants may be available if the chair wanted to hear from them. Otherwise, we did provide a memo for recommended actions on acknowledging of the appeal.
Yes, we have that memo. Commissioners, does someone want to make the recommendation? Staff make a motion as to the recommendation staff has presented. Commissioner Park?
Yes, it's in my district, and I'm going to move that we acknowledge the dismissal of the appeal and that we drop the item from the agenda permanently. As staff has recommended.
Okay. Is there a second? Blau.
I'll second it.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. We need a roll call on that motion. Mr. Villalobos.
Commissioner Bradley,
Aye.
Commissioner Park,
Aye.
Commissioner Blau,
All right.
and Chair Cooney.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
All right, that concludes the business of the Santa Barbara County Planning Commission for today's meeting. Thank you all very much, and we're hopeful Commissioner Freeney is back in the chair on the 28th. Meeting
The
adjourned.
murder of crows behind me says we should adjourn. Thank you.